This might be the very first time you witness the 10 deadliest man-made disasters in history. From wars that swallowed nations, to explosions that tore cities apart, to genocides that left wounds no time could ever heal. Next, follow Top Bit as we step into the shocking human tragedies. Top 10, the Great Smog of London, 1952, UK. In December 1952, London experienced one of the deadliest environmental disasters in history. For just a few days, the city was engulfed in a thick, yellowish fog, later known as the Great Smog. But this was no ordinary fog. It was a lethal combination of smoke from coal fires, industrial pollution, and unusual weather conditions. The smog was so dense that people couldn't see their own hands in front of them. Public transport ground to a halt, and everyday life became almost impossible. The consequences were devastating. Over 12,000 people lost their lives, mostly from respiratory illnesses like bronchitis and pneumonia. Hospitals were overwhelmed, and doctors struggled to cope with the sheer scale of the disaster. The Great Smog didn't just take lives, it changed the way the world viewed air pollution. It led to the Clean Air Act of 1956, one of the first laws to regulate urban pollution, and highlighted the urgent need for environmental protection. Today, the Great Smog of London stands as a stark reminder the air we breathe can be invisible danger, and neglecting it can cost thousands of lives in just days. Top 9. Fukushima Nuclear Disaster, 2011, Japan. On March 11, 2011, a massive earthquake and tsunami struck Japan, setting off one of the most serious nuclear accidents in history. The Fukushima Daiichi plant was hit hard. The tsunami flooded its reactors, causing core meltdowns. While the natural disaster was extreme, the plant's design limitations and missteps by Tokyo Electric Power Company, TEPCO, worsened the situation. Although the immediate death toll from the nuclear accident was small, the aftermath was devastating. Forced evacuations, radiation exposure concerns, and long-term health risks affected thousands of people. Indirect deaths caused by stress, displacement, and other factors are estimated to reach thousands. The environmental impact was enormous. Radioactive materials leaked into the surrounding land and ocean, contaminating ecosystems and fishing zones. Even today, parts of the region remain off-limits, and the psychological scars on survivors are profound. Fukushima reminded the world of the fragile balance between modern energy demands and nature's unpredictable power. It's a stark warning. Even the most advanced technology can be vulnerable to extreme natural events. Top 8. Wanggongchang Explosion, 1626, Beijing. In 1626, Beijing experienced one of the deadliest urban explosions in history. Early one morning, the Wanggongchang Armory, packed with vast amounts of gunpowder, suddenly erupted in a massive blast. The force of the explosion was unimaginable. Buildings within several kilometers were obliterated, and debris along with bodies were thrown kilometers away. Fires broke out across the city, turning the streets into chaos. Eyewitnesses described it as the sky falling and the earth shattering. Around 20,000 people lost their lives in an instant. The roar of the blast could be heard for hundreds of miles as Beijing descended into a scene of horror and devastation. The Wanggongchang explosion remains a chilling reminder of how explosive materials, if not properly managed, can transform a single accident into a catastrophic disaster. Top 7. Bhopal Gas Tragedy, 1984, India. On the night of December 2nd, 1984, the city of Bhopal, India, became the epicenter of one of the deadliest industrial disasters in history. At the Union Carbide pesticide plant, a leak occurred. It released a cloud of deadly methyl isocyanate gas into nearby neighborhoods. The gas spread silently through the city, seeping into homes and streets. People woke up to choking fumes, unable to see, breathe, or escape in time. Panic and confusion ensued as thousands struggled for survival. Between 15,000 and 25,000 people ultimately lost their lives, and many more suffered long-term health effects. The Bhopal disaster shocked the world, highlighting the catastrophic consequences of industrial negligence and insufficient safety measures. Even decades later, the impact is still felt as contaminated land and water continue to affect the survivors and the community. Top 6. Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombings, 1945, Japan. In August 1945, humanity witnessed a terrifying new form of destruction. The United States dropped atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, instantly annihilating the urban centers. The blasts were catastrophic. Tens of thousands were killed immediately, buildings flattened, and fires engulfed what remained. Radiation lingered long after, causing illness and death for years to come. In total, approximately 200,000 people lost their lives between the two cities. This remains the only instance in human history where nuclear weapons were used in war, leaving an indelible mark on humanity. The devastation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki not only ended a war, but also demonstrated the horrifying potential of nuclear technology when unleashed. Top 5. Rwandan Genocide, 1994 Rwanda. In 1994, Rwanda became the stage for one of the most horrific acts of mass violence in modern history. Over the course of just 100 days, extremist members of the Hutu majority carried out a systematic campaign of murder against the Tutsi population and moderate Hutus. The killings were swift and brutal. Neighbors turned against neighbors, entire villages were massacred, and rivers ran red with blood. The world watched in shock as the violence escalated with unimaginable speed. By the end of the genocide, approximately 800,000 to 1 million people had been killed. The Rwandan genocide remains a chilling reminder of how hatred, propaganda, and unchecked extremism can escalate into mass atrocities in a very short time. Top 4. The Armenian Genocide, 1915-1917 Ottoman Empire. From 1915 to 1917, during the turmoil of World War I, the Ottoman Empire carried out one of the first major genocides of the 20th century. The Armenian population, long treated with suspicion and hostility, became the target of systematic persecution. What began as forced relocations quickly escalated into mass killings, starvation, and brutal death marches through the desert. Villages were emptied, families torn apart, and entire communities wiped from the map. By the time it ended, an estimated 1 to 1.5 million Armenians had lost their lives. For survivors, the scars stretched far beyond the numbers. This genocide erased a culture that had flourished for centuries in its homeland, leaving wounds that still echo through history. Top 3. World War I, 1914-1918. World War I, often called the War to End All Wars, began in 1914 after the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. What started as a regional conflict quickly spiraled into a global catastrophe, pulling in empires and nations across Europe, Asia, and beyond. Trench warfare defined the battlefield, endless lines of mud, barbed wire, and soldiers trapped in a deadly stalemate. New weapons like machine guns, tanks, poison gas, and aircraft turned the war into a mechanized slaughter unlike anything humanity had ever seen. By the time the armistice was signed in 1918, 15 to 20 million people, soldiers and civilians alike, had lost their lives. The war redrew borders, toppled empires, and planted the seeds of future conflicts, proving that despite its nickname, it was far from the last Great War. Top 2. The colonization of the Americas, 15th-19th century. The colonization of the Americas stands as one of the deadliest chapters in human history. Beginning in the late 15th century, European powers, Spain, Portugal, Britain, France, and others, arrived on the continent in search of land, wealth, and power. What followed was centuries of conquest, warfare, and forced displacement. But perhaps even more devastating were the invisible invaders: smallpox, measles, influenza, and other old-world diseases. Without immunity, indigenous populations were wiped out on an unimaginable scale. Historians estimate that between 50 to 100 million people perished across the Americas through violence, enslavement, famine, and epidemic. Entire cultures, languages, and civilizations were destroyed, leaving scars that are still visible today. The colonization of the Americas was not just the loss of countless lives, it was the near erasure of entire peoples, rewriting the destiny of a whole continent. Top 1. World War II, 1939-1945. World War II was the deadliest conflict in human history. Fought across Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Pacific, it engulfed nations on every continent and left scars that still shape our world today. The war began with the invasion of Poland in 1939, but soon spread into a global struggle involving more than 100 million soldiers. It was marked by massive battles, relentless bombings, and atrocities on an industrial scale. The Holocaust claimed the lives of 6 million Jews and millions of others persecuted by the Nazi regime. Cities like Hiroshima and Nagasaki witnessed the only use of nuclear weapons in warfare, where a single flash of light erased entire communities in an instant. From the Eastern Front's brutal sieges to the Pacific's island battles, the scale of suffering was beyond comprehension. By the time the war ended in 1945, an estimated 70 to 85 million people were dead, soldiers and civilians alike. World War II was not just a war between nations, it was a cataclysm that redefined humanity, forcing us to confront the horrors of unchecked hatred, totalitarianism, and the destructive power of modern technology. From toxic smog to world wars, these disasters remind us of the darkest side of human choices. They show how greed, hatred, neglect, and ambition can unleash suffering on a massive scale. But history is not just tragedy, it's also a warning. If we learn from these mistakes, perhaps we can prevent the next catastrophe. Which of these events shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most powerful stories.